Greetings, game changers. I trust that your day is going well and that your motivation to be a part of the movement, and make a difference in the lives of our youth is as high and as energized as it was from the beginning, because nothing's changed. We're still on a mission. We still are purpose-driven to change the trajectory of where too many of our youth are headed, because they're confused, they're deceived, and they're contradicted. And it's our job to point them in the direction of living life God's way, so that they surrender appropriately and don't explode. So today, I'm diving into lesson 2, week 2 of the Super Sunday Challenge. We're going to talk about perspective matters, because perspective does matter. And I want to start this lesson with a personal story in my life when I really became crystal clear that what God sees is so different than what Verdi sees. So here's my story. My children were going to spend the weekend together in Beaumont. My daughter was in college, and the boys were going to travel to Beaumont and spend the weekend with their sister at college. We were excited, they were excited, she was excited, and all was well until we found out that there was a thunderstorm, a tropical depression actually, growing in the Gulf and headed for Texas. So everything changed. We had to wait and see how bad is it going to get. Their dad and I were here in Houston. The kids were in Beaumont, and the thunderstorm, the tropical depression, was heading up the coast. Well, if you remember, they evacuated Beaumont and Port Arthur, and everybody had to get out of Dodge. And we're here, our kids are there, and there's no way we can get to them in the middle of this mayhem. So I started praying, dear God, but I must confess, it wasn't one of those, I trust you, I have faith in you, you're reverent, you're all-knowing, you're all-powerful. It was one of those, you got to be kidding me, angry, scared prayers. And I'm not proud of that, but that's the reality. I was scared and I was angry because I believed that God could have stopped this on so many levels in so many ways. So here we are. Our kids are in Beaumont. GPS was not what GPS was then, and I-10 was a parking lot. So I'm praying and I'm angry and I'm very scared. And in the middle of my anger and my fear, God said, pump the brakes, little girl. I didn't send your kids there to die altogether. I sent the boys to Beaumont so Carice wouldn't have to navigate the highway in the middle of the night alone. Say, what? What? You had a plan? This was a part of your plan? And I immediately hung my head and asked God to forgive me for doubting him. So I make 2 points by this story. And the end of the story is the kids made it home safely. I learned a valuable, incredibly important lesson, which is what God sees is not what I often see. And I cannot ever forget that. Coupled with the fact that God is sovereign. He doesn't scratch his head. He doesn't get confused. He doesn't wonder, how am I going to handle this? God always knows what he's doing. So week 2, lesson 2 is all about perspective matters. And there are 3 key points that this lesson addresses. One of the key points is, do you believe that God is absolutely sovereign? Absolutely sovereign, not kind of sovereign, not sort of sovereign, but absolutely sovereign. everything is under his control, and he has the right, the authority to do things, to manage the world the way he chooses to. Number 2, is he your boss? Is God your boss? Or do you have other bosses that you follow, listen to, adhere to their dictates, their directions, instructions? And then finally, as I mentioned in the beginning, do you see things the way God sees things? And if you don't, do you think it would be a good idea to change your perspective on how you see things? Now, I can see you looking at me, wondering, how am I supposed to know God's perspective? You have to look for it. It doesn't just fall in your lap necessarily, although he could just drop it in your lap. But if you're not looking for it, you'll let it fall on the floor. So the way I like to start this lesson is to ask the youth to think about the sovereignty of God and what that means to them. And sovereignty is just another word for authority and power. He's in control. And so I walk them through, what do they know about God and who he is and how things came to be as they were, compared to other influencers in their lives, parents, teachers, coaches, athletes, entertainers, friends, who might likewise try to influence how they think about things and how they look at things. So I want them to make that contrast between who the authorities are that they respect and why do they respect them? What have they shown them that makes them believe that's an authority that they should follow, adhere to, learn from, etc., etc. And I just want them to talk about it. And again, depending on the size of your group, you can have individuals share with the entire group, or you can break them up into pairs and just have them have a conversation. But I take them to Genesis and I remind them that Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning, God created. And we can just look at that and ask them, who do they know who has done anything comparable to the things that God has done? And I contrast it to, working on a job and having a boss and following their rules and getting interviewed and sizing up the organization and the person who will potentially be your boss, so they can compare and contrast. How do they make that decision about who they follow and why they follow them? Because at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, who am I going to let tell me what to do and how to do it and when to do it? And we cannot escape that question. Now, pop quiz. Remember, I like my pop quizzes. So this pop quiz is about the GPS that all of us have on every device we own. We have a method of getting from point A to point B. And I asked the youth, because some of them are driving and some of them aren't, have you ever argued with the GPS, or have you ever seen an adult that you love and care about argue with the GPS? And you can imagine the answers that I get and the giggles in the room, because either they have argued with the GPS or they've watched an adult argue with the GPS incessantly because they just doubt, why are you sending me this way? And I had to share with them that when I did the youth challenge, I shared with the group that the morning before one of our groups, I had driven to a high school to speak to some teenagers. And I had never been to the high school before. So I'm in my car, and of course, I engage my GPS. Take me there. Tell me where I'm going. And I didn't quite argue with the GPS, but I asked the GPS, is this the way you're taking me today? Now, mind you, I've never been to the high school. but I still questioned the way the GPS was taking me. And of course, you and I both know the GPS doesn't tell us why it takes us one way or the other. It just takes us. And it's up to us to follow obediently or to question and to challenge and to doubt. And so in life, I ask the young people to consider, where are you right now in life? And there are lots of ways to answer that question. Where are you in terms of your academics? Where are you in your family? Where are you socially? Where do you find yourself in this moment? And remember, these are handouts. So I'm guiding them through this discussion and this exercise using the handouts that are prepared. And remember, don't stay silent and not reach out and say, hey, Dr. V, how can I get these handouts? Because I don't want you to struggle to create things that have already been created. But I also don't want you to, feel confined to do it exactly the same way that I've done it, because that's not necessary either. So you have to find where you fit in and how much you need, and you can reach out to me and we can have a conversation. You can hit me on my Facebook page. You can hit me on my website and we can discuss it so you can sort of figure this out. So I want to give you the freedom to bring who you are to this Super Sunday Challenge and the leading the Bible studies, but I don't want you to feel like you don't have any assistance. So I asked them, where are they? And again, how you process this and have them discuss that is up to you. But that's the first part of leaving home and following the GPS, is where you're starting. But then more critical than that is where you're trying to go. What do you want to achieve? What level do you want to advance to? Because so often we get caught up in where we are that we lose sight of where we're trying to go and how we're going to get there. So then after they tell me where they're starting, then I want them to look at where they're trying to go. What are they trying to achieve? What do they want to accomplish? And then, of course, the most critical question of the three is, how are you going to get there? What route are you going to take? Are you going to get there quickly? Are you going to get there the long route? Are you going to backtrack and be detoured? And in life, that's exactly what God is asking us. How are you going to get where you're trying to go? And are you trying to go someplace that I want you to go? Or are you trying to go someplace that that's not in my plans and purposes for you? And it's not too early for our young people to begin to consider these questions. And at the end of the day, they're either going to follow God, the GPS, or they're going to follow the athlete GPS, or their peers, the GPS, or sometimes even their parents, the GPS, who are not absolutely sovereign, and they can't see that young person's life from God's perspective. So they have to look at this and they have to discuss that. And I confront them. Has your way been working for you? Are you getting there as quickly as you want to? Are you facing challenges successfully? Are you stumbling a lot and going backwards sometimes? And at the end of the day, are there some changes you need to make? Now I'm looking at you. I see you. This doesn't just apply to young people. This applies to all of us. I have to ask myself in the middle of some of the challenges and circumstances that I face, am I going about this the way God would want me to? Am I looking at this challenge from God's perspective? I had an opportunity to say to a man this week, you thought that came from XYZ. That was God in your face showing you you're going the wrong way. And I'm going to stop you because I know what's at the end of the route that you're taking. And so I'm just going to remove you from that, or remove that thing from you. So we have to ask ourselves, is God sovereign, Are we following him as our GPS? Because there are many paths to choose from. There are many people who would lead all of us, but you have to decide who you will choose to follow and which path you will take. And then, this is my favorite part of this lesson. I asked them, do you see things the way God sees them? I shared my story. That's just one story. I could tell you so many stories about God saying, wink, wink. Let me show you what I see. And the way that I introduce this Perspective Matters exercise is I show them a picture, and the picture is one of those optical illusions, and you can see more than one thing in the picture. And I want them each to look at the picture, and then I want them to tell me what they see. And absolutely, optical illusions can be seen in different ways depending on how you look at it. And that reality becomes crystal clear when they realize everybody in the room didn't see the same thing. And it's not necessarily right or wrong, but your perspective influences so much what you see. And so I want them to begin to recognize that and understand how they are being influenced by the way they look at things. And I don't care what they're looking at. I just care that they recognize that how they look at things determines what they see. And sometimes they really need to adjust their perspective. And I don't want to make it complicated. I want to keep it simple. I want them to see that multiple people can look at the same picture and see different things, but I also want them to see that multiple people have different opinions and different likes and different tastes. And it's as things as simple as, who do you think's the best basketball player, Steph Curry or LeBron James? What's your favorite holiday, Halloween or Christmas? Do you like roller coasters or do you like bumper cars? Are you a Gatorade kind of person or are you a Coke kind of person? Do you like to attend musical events, concerts? Are you the kind of person who wants to go to football games or basketball games? It's just a matter of your perspective. You know, I in my book, I talk about roller coasters. When I was a little girl, I hated riding roller coasters. But I know even as I'm talking to you, some of you are thinking, you gotta be kidding me. Roller coasters are incredibly fun. Not so for me. Again, it's just a matter of perspective and how we look at different things. And at the end of the lesson, I really take them back to help them understand, if they had a choice in life, whose life would they want to live? Whose challenges would they want to face to achieve, to accomplish the goals that they have in life? And I talk about biblical characters, of course, Moses, David, Mary, but I could talk about contemporary leaders, entertainers, people that we know, because each of them went through what they went through to get where they are. And even LeBron James, and you know I've said it before, I'm a sports nut. Even LeBron James spent a period of his life living in a car with his mother because of their financial plight and the challenges that they faced when he was growing up. Now, I don't know how many of you know that story, but LeBron James lived in his car with his mother, missed days of school because of it. You don't believe me? Google it, check it out. But that's not who LeBron James is today. And LeBron James had a perspective about life. And his mother fueled it, fed it, instilled that perspective about life. That he was not going to be stopped by challenges, and he was going to live a better life as an adult and make a difference in the lives of so many other adults and children and young people. So perspective matters. And I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what the youth in your group are facing. But how they look at what they're facing is so critical. So this lesson is all about perspective and helping them to recognize, number one, what is their perspective on God's sovereignty? The book says your life is not an accident. The book says God didn't go, oops, I gave you the wrong mom and dad. You were raised in the wrong city. The way you look was not my plan for you. Not at all. God is sovereign. And he's either sovereign of everything or he's sovereign over nothing. But they have to ask themselves that question. I sort of believe if God could create the universe, that gives him a lot of absolute authority in my life. Number two, is he your boss? Do you follow him? Do you let him instruct you on how to live and play the game of life? It's your choice. I don't work for any company that I don't want to work for. So young people and old people get to choose who they will allow to boss them. But number three, are you looking at life from God's perspective, or are you limited by this perspective that you bring to the table that interferes with you being able to see all that God sees? Because his perspectives always are much bigger and broader and far-reaching than ours, just like the GPS. It knows all the backstory that it doesn't tell us. It just tells us how to get there most effectively and efficiently. It's up to us to argue, resist, or just obey. So, lesson 2 is a lot of fun, but lesson 2 is an eye-opener, because so often we don't recognize that what we see is determined by how we look at it. And I challenge the youth to look at their lives and every detail of it, knowing that God is absolutely sovereign. He should be our GPS. And his perspective is not our perspective in any shape or format unless we chase him down and figure out what his perspective is, just like I did when I prayed. Oh, God, I see. Thank you, God. Because one of my sons was a mechanic and my other son was a fighter. So if anything happened on the road to my baby girl, they had it covered. So enjoy lesson 2. Give the youth the opportunity just to be fed and filled with the truth, and enjoy what they give you in return. Take care. I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.